What's up, dreamers? Welcome back to Appalachia Valley and to the small town of Autumndale. This is the third episode of a small mini-series that I'm doing, and we're almost done. We left off our story with Mr. Jonathan Douglas, a local to Autumndale and a businessman and entrepreneur. With enough signatures on his petition, he was able to open up the very first grocery store within Autumndale and in Appalachia Valley. But for Mr. Jonathan, this was just the start. If there were two things that he loved, it was his hometown of Autumndale and money. See, at the time, most people within Appalachia Valley lived out in the country, in farmhouses. Most of the space that was planned out within town was unoccupied, mostly just gravel fields and places to store crops while waiting for the train to come pick them up. Jonathan thought this was such a waste of space and knew that with a scenic place like Autumndale, if businesses were built and a community was created, people would come and they would flock to Autumndale. But before we get to that, we need to talk about what we did in the last episode and some of the changes that need to be made based off of the recommendations that I received. So I guess Safeway isn't all too common within Appalachia. So I'm going to change it out for Food Lion, and I hope that that fits the area just a little bit better. I also want to go in and detail it just a little bit, giving some places to put your shopping carts, or as they might say in the area, buggies. Now, right now for those shopping carts or buggies, I'm going to have to use these, which I know don't fit the theme here. These are Target ones, and that's all I have right now, so I'm gonna have to go back into the workshop and change them out. Alright, so I went in the workshop and found the only shopping carts that I could. I usually don't have a hard time finding these specific assets that I'm looking for, and I know they're out there because I've seen them in other builds, but I just could not find good shopping carts on the workshop. So if you have any recommendations for me, leave me a link in the comments, I would appreciate it. But for now, we're gonna go with these. Along with the shopping carts, I also wanted to add in some parking lights, just to give it that last bit of realism. Another recommendation that I had was the police station that I used. It didn't exactly fit the theme of this town, and that's understandable. So we switched to something a little bit smaller scale, and we're going to fit it in right here in the same place and just kind of blend it into the city. Now back to Mr. Douglas. Throughout the 60s and 70s, franchise companies were popping up all over the United States. And he knew that this was going to be the best way for him to make as much money as he possibly could. From the research that he did, he found that these small stores that were selling cheap products for less than $1 were extremely successful in small towns throughout the country. And he knew that would also be the case for Autumndale. And with that, he franchised the first Dollar General. Now, with the Food Lion, there was a lot of pushback from the older generation. But after being open for only 1 year, it was a major success and a hit throughout the community. So after that, Jonathan didn't have much trouble opening up new stores. He then hired his friend Thomas Wren, who was a general contractor, to build the first small shopping center right downtown Autumndale. Initially, it was just a shoe store, and then came the United Parcel Service and a Subway, which was the first ever fast food franchise within Autumndale. And then in the early 80s, when VHS players were in every single home, the first ever Blockbuster was finally opened. And let me tell you, with Star Wars just releasing a few months earlier, that store was busy. Now, there's one iconic landmark within Autumndale that we haven't talked about yet, and this landmark was built many years before Jonathan, and even before his great-great-grandfather Eldon. See, back in the year 1789, when Autumndale was established, there were only a few little buildings in town, and everyone else just lived out in the countryside. However, one of the first buildings to go up was the Baptist Church. The people in this part of the country were extremely religious and God-fearing people. And to this day, it remains an iconic spot within Autumndale. Years later, as the city grew, there came the need for a city park. And honestly, what better place for it than right across the street from the main landmark within the town? The park became a central location for the community to come together for events like parties and festivals. It eventually became the location for the annual Autumn Day Festival, where people come to commemorate the beauty of Appalachia Valley and admire the beautiful native trees within the park that every year turn into that iconic gold and red color. With one main church that is established within the town, you started to see more and more churches pop up throughout Appalachia Valley. Religious or not, to stick to realism, you have to put churches like this in towns like these to keep them realistic. Because in real life, small town America, community is everything. And the church becomes a meeting house where the community can come together, spend time together, and share common interest. And despite the religious factor, I think that's one of the reasons why you see so many churches in small towns like these. I really hate to do it, but in order for us to continue our story here in Autumndale, things are gonna have to get a little bit somber for a minute. See, back in the 1960s, there was this family, the Young family. A father, a mother, and 3 children. Their dad, Marcus Young, he was the current preacher within town at the Baptist church. And this was a happy family, full of love and care for one another. One rainy night, as they were coming back from a pastor's conference in the next county over, there was an accident. Marcus, who was driving at the time, lost control of the car and veered off, hitting a tree and rolling the car 3 or 4 times. When the car came to a stop, everyone seemed to be fine, except for one person, their younger sister, Marcella. See, when the car made impact with a tree, it was directly on her side. At this point in history, car seats weren't mandated in the United States. So when the car made contact with the tree, Marcella went flying. The impact didn't kill her, however, she was in bad shape, and unfortunately, she had suffered from a collapsed lung. Now, if there had been a hospital within Autumndale at the time, someone could have taken her straight to it, and she definitely would have survived. However, unfortunately, the nearest hospital was about an hour away in the next city over. They rushed her there as quick as they could. Unfortunately, it just took too long, and they didn't make it in time. This experience was traumatic for the family, especially for the oldest brother, Michael. This was an event that would change his life forever. He knew that Autumndale needed a hospital. So he studied as hard as he possibly could throughout school, went to the state university where he received his medical license. As well, he received his master's degree in hospital management, with help from the local government, as well as the local general contractor, Mr. Thomas Wren. The first Autumndale hospital was built and established, and named after his younger sister, Marcella. The Marcella General Hospital. I'm sorry that took such a sad turn, but now I think you have a better understanding of how the street looks the way it does today. From the hospital all the way down to the city park. This street eventually became known as Fremont Street. It was basically a second main street, or the bypass to downtown. All of the events that led up to this point helped shape and create the small town of Autumndale. So I know in the last episode I had mentioned that I was going to be working on the residential area in this episode. Well, I might have to retract that a little bit, however, I do promise that it's coming. It turns out that these episodes took a lot longer to edit than I thought they would, and if I wanted to keep that 1 video a week deadline, I was gonna have to shorten the video. However, the good news is there might be an extra episode within the series. There's still so much to talk about within Autumndale, like the schools and the other churches, the neighborhoods, the small industrial area, the farmland, and even the other side of the tracks. So don't worry, it's all coming. I do want to say thanks, because in the last few episodes, I've gotten so much support and a lot of new viewers, so I just want to say thank you and welcome to the channel. Again, please give me any recommendations that you all might have. I do want to make this little town as realistic and accurate as possible. I'm not from the Appalachia area, so any recommendations or changes that I need to make, I'm more than willing to do so, if I'm able to. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and just remember, if you can dream it, you can build it.